Surely someone. I don't believe that no one here has done it. Any sort of water-based recovery? Ice baths, anyone? Yeah? What have you done? Yep. Yeah? Yeah, and? What do you think? It's cold, yeah. Right answer. What did you think of it? Do you think it was helpful? Have you done it many times or only one or two?
Just like when I'm feeling really lactic sometimes.
Yep. Yep. And do you think it works?
Yeah, the next day I'm usually feeling a lot better than
Yep. Okay. Great. All right. That kicks things off well. You've set this up well. If you said it doesn't work, we could have canned the whole presentation. So hydrotherapy and recovery. So what we'll go through a little bit. What is it? What does it do? What do we think works? What do we think doesn't really work? When we might use it? When we might actually avoid using it? And any sort of considerations about how we might go about using it. Was that a good choice of photos or? Good, okay. So has everyone got pen and paper? So we're just going to have a test at the end of this on this diagram. No, just kidding. So as you can kind of see though, there's a lot of different ideas around how and why hydrotherapy might improve recovery. So there's lots of different sort of technical, scientific, nerdy stuff that people have done to get an idea of what they think and why they think it might work. And I'll go through a little bit of it, definitely not all of that. So what and why? So it's, as you guys probably know, it's a pretty popular form of recovery nowadays. All you need to do really is have a look at, watch the sports section of the news on a Monday night. You'll probably see your favourite footy club down at St Kilda Beach or something like that. So it's a pretty popular form of recovery these days. And as we sort of alluded to, it's really based around immersing yourself in water. So either cold water, warm water, or maybe contrast, going in between hot and cold. They're sort of the main ways that they've been done. And sort of the theory is that temperature and pressure changes in blood flow decrease post-exercise inflammation and muscle damage. So that's one of the theories around why it might work. Also, as you alluded to a little bit before, there might be some sort of like a flushing effect is what they've termed, that it might be removal of muscle metabolites and acidity, so lactic acid, as you suggested before. It's another theory. Theory that might reduce muscle soreness or DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. And it also might hasten your system fatigue. So you know how sometimes you're a bit tired and it's just, your muscles feel just really, really sore, but other times your muscles feel fine, but you just feel flat. Has anybody sort of felt like that from training before? So that's more based around what they call your central nervous system. And so there's a bit of a theory that cold water immersions or hydrotherapy can improve more your system-based recovery. Potentially can improve sleep, and potentially can improve performance in hot environments, which is not necessarily as applicable to this group. So it's just sprinters in here now, is that right? Yep, okay, so yeah, probably not as applicable to you guys. So what are the pros of hydrotherapy? So as we sort of alluded to before, what the research has shown that yes, it can reduce inflammation and muscle damage. So in a sport like sprinting, you're doing obviously some high speed running, you're getting some inflammation and damage to your muscles. And the research has shown that actually hydrotherapy can reduce that inflammation and reduce that muscle damage so that you can perform better in the following days. It can in fact reduce your muscle soreness. So when you do hydrotherapy the next day, often your muscles don't feel as sore. And probably the most important thing to you guys is that they've seen improvements in recovery on performance tests. So things like power and strength, they've seen improvements in those sort of things the days following some hydrotherapy. Things that include the stretch shortening cycle. Has anybody heard of the stretch shortening cycle? It's basically when your muscles stretch and contract, as they do primarily in a sport like sprinting. And that can cause quite a bit of muscle damage and soreness. And they've shown that using hydrotherapy is really good at improving the recovery of those sorts of things. For your endurance events that you guys probably don't care about all that much, it has been shown to reduce inflammation and system-based recovery, which then improves performance on endurance tasks. And it often can also improve performance in hot environments, which is more acute. So if you were doing, if you're an endurance runner doing two races in one day in really, really hot environments, doing a cooling procedure might actually improve your subsequent performance, but that's not really applicable to you guys. It has been shown to, in fact, increase your sleep quality. So one of the things is when towards the night time, what happens is your body naturally starts to bring its body temperature and its skin temperature down, and that's the way that your body knows that, all right, it's time to get ready to go to sleep. And so doing a cold water immersion obviously brings your core temperature and your skin temperature down much faster, and that can sort of switch you over into that recovery type of mode, which will allow you to get to sleep faster and sleep better. And although we won't touch on it really here, when we're talking about recovery, ultimately sleep is your best form of recovery. So there's all different sorts of things you can do, from hydrotherapy, nutrition, massage, foam rolling, physio, etc. But realistically, sleep is probably the best form of recovery. And so yeah, the recovery of your sort of autonomic nervous system. Who's heard of like the fight or flight response and the rest and digest sort of thing? Yeah. So what they've shown in the research is that doing a water immersion can switch your body into that rest and digest mode a lot faster, which means that you're in a recovery sort of mode and your body is doing all the little things that help you recover faster due to that. However, mostly all of these improvements that we've seen outside of the thing that occurs in a hot environment for more your endurance events is a bit more of a chronic recovery, more your 12 to 72 hours. So yeah, more, less about, if you've got something that you've got to do, in half an hour, or a few hours time, not much evidence showing that this works too well. It's more around the 12 to 72 hours. So as you said before, you generally feel better the next day and you can perform better the next day. That's what we've sort of seen. So there's pros, there's obviously going to be some cons as well. So the timing of it, just as we alluded to before. So what we know a little bit is that if you do hydrotherapy, especially cold water immersion, it can actually impair acute performance or your same day performance. So would there be situations where you might actually, in a competition, have to perform more than once on the same day? Yeah. So doing a cold water immersion may not be the best option for you in that situation. So I've given you a bit of a hint accidentally. Can anybody guess why that might be? Anybody who's quick enough to see what I... Oh. Why might doing like a cold water bath actually make you go worse? Because you didn't enjoy it? Did you say? Maybe. Muscle tightness, yep, definitely that could be something. What else? Before you sprint, what do you do? Immediately before you compete, what do you do? Warm up? What would a cold bath do? Cool your muscles down. Exactly. So, and we've seen that in quite a lot of the research on performance, is that doing some hydrotherapy, especially if it's a cold water immersion, can cool your muscle temperatures down, which impairs the contractile function of the muscle. So as you said before, you always warm up before an event. The main reason that you do that is to increase your muscle temperature, because we know that warmer muscles can produce more force and more power. That's why you run faster, you sprint faster when your muscles are warm. So if you are going to do some sort of hydrotherapy between events, if you've got the facilities, you're probably better off doing it in a warmer type of water. And it can also, like we said before, it can switch you over into your rest or digest part of your nervous system. So therefore it can actually suppress your fight or flight part of your nervous system. And when you're at the start line, waiting for the gun, you want to be in fight or flight mode, ready to jump out the block. So the last thing you want is to be sort of switched into that recovery mode. So perfect for this room. These things are especially important for sprint and power-based events. There's also a bit of a theory that especially cold water immersion can impair the adaptation to training. And so the whole idea around training is you're stressing your body, and then you sort of supercompensate. Your body builds itself up stronger to be able to cope with the stress that you're putting out into every day. That's the reason you train every day. So a bit of a theory that if you do too many recovery techniques, you might actually blunt some of that stress that your body needs to be able to make the gains that it needs. And that's been shown to be true in some sort of strength-based type of training. So if you're doing weight-based training, it's probably not ideal to do water immersion hydrotherapy afterwards, especially cold water immersion, because it has been shown that what they've done is had studies where they've gotten, if we split the group in two, this half of the room is going to do gym training and that's it. This half of the room is going to do the exact same training but do cold water immersions after all of their gym training sessions. What we've seen is that this half of the room improves all their strength and power measures by more. So I guess you've got to think about, and not that you guys really care, but in terms of the endurance side of things, that hasn't been shown to be true. So it doesn't seem to impair endurance-based adaptations. So really, when you're thinking about using these sort of strategies, you need to think about what period you're in. Are you in an adaptation training mode where really we're just worried about improvements and we're not too worried about performance the next day? Or are we you might be in your taper, or you might be in a period where actually being really well recovered and performance on the day is much more important than the gain you might make from 1 or 2 training sessions. In that situation, you might use your cold water immersion type stuff. Any sort of consideration? So again, the type of fatigue, if it's peripheral based sort of muscle soreness, inflammation, damage type of fatigue, you might be looking to use, some of the evidence a little bit out there has shown that maybe a contrast hot-cold might be better, although it's not really agreed upon. Whereas if you're looking for your central system-based fatigue that you're trying to improve, the cold water immersion is shown to be better. Again, what sort of time frame between hydrotherapy and your next performance? Acute versus chronic recovery. Acutely, it might be detrimental to your next performance, but chronically, in the next few days, it might be beneficial. Things like body composition have been shown to affect how you might respond to hydrotherapy. So people with less body fat and more, less body fat, generally skin, muscle and core temperatures will drop a lot faster, and vice versa, people with a lot more muscle mass might need a little bit more time to cool and get some of those positive effects. What about age? So often younger athletes, they're obviously a little bit smaller, a little bit less muscle mass usually, so they might require a little bit less time in the hydrotherapy. What about gender? There's generally, differences in body composition between guys and girls, size and muscle mass and things of that nature, body composition, skin folds, all those sorts of things can be different, so you need to take that into account as well. Water temperature, you'll be really happy to know. Initially when they started doing this sort of stuff, they thought, we're going to put people in cold baths, it's going to reduce inflammation, it's going to be great, and the colder the better. Whatever they can deal with is better. But actually they've found that 15 degrees might be better than 5 degrees, so they've done some post-testing on things like counter movement jump, some muscle damage markers and some muscle soreness, and they found that actually 15 degrees is better than 5 degrees, which is great for anyone who wants to do this sort of thing, because if you've ever done it in 5 degree temperature, it's horrible. I've tried it before, it's not fun. 15 degrees is a lot better. Also the depth of the immersion, so depending on what you're trying to do, if it's more just that sort of muscular based fatigue, you might only just sort of immerse yourself to your legs, but if you're looking for a more that system based response, you might have to do more of a whole body immersion. That's shown to be a little bit better. And then the duration, again, that's going to be really dependent on your age, weight, size, gender, all those different sorts of things as to how long you might go in there for. So it might be anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes depending on a number of those different factors. And then again, the environment that you're in. If you're in a really, really hot environment, it might be a little bit more beneficial for your endurance events. If it's really, really cold, could that be detrimental? All those different things. That's it. Any questions? I think you're going to go and actually try some of these different things now.
Is there a ballpark guide, like 70 kilo male against 50 kilo female?
No, unfortunately there's not. I think at the AIS someone has just did their PhD in comparing those different sorts of things, but they didn't really get to the point where they can say, right, if this is your body composition, size, shape, etc., therefore you need to spend this amount of time, because there's also some qualities just around how your body deals with cold and heat and things that are not sort of in relation to any of those things as well. So generally your smaller, leaner athletes require less time in there, and you'll find out pretty quickly if you get in there and after 5 minutes you're shaking, you've probably done enough. But if you're sort of in there for sort of 10 minutes, it's a little bit of trial and error, but yeah, generally less time for smaller and younger athletes, more time for your larger, more muscle mass athletes. Yep.
The sequencing in terms of beating going in the pool.
Yep. I do sleeping last. Yep. Yeah, well, generally what we do, and some of it will be dictated a little bit by logistics and where your setup is, if you've got access to this at the event or if it's somewhere else. But and in certain situations, it may not necessarily matter too much. Generally, we say sort of nutrition and any physical-based things, if you need to see a physio or massage or rolling or those sorts of things, might happen first, and then you'd move into more hydrotherapy type of stuff, and then obviously from there you might do some compression type things after that, and then obviously sort of off to bed after that, and probably further nutrition stuff after that. Very quiet group, other than when you're laughing at photos. Cool, all right. I think that's it.